Macron yesterday at the Elysee Palace in Paris. A few months ago, this would have been surprising because of the hostilities between Macron and the new Senegalese government. $1.2 billion program to boost vaccine production in the African continent. So it seems that Faye decided it was worth it to play nice. It was bigger strategy.
President of the French Republic, our host, Mr. Head of State and Government, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President of the African Union Commission, Mr. President of the Gavi Council of Administration, ambassadors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the French authorities for the warm welcome and hospitality they have given us since we arrived in Paris. I am happy to join you today to participate in this mobilization campaign for vaccine sovereignty and innovation, called the launch of the African Vaccine Manufacturing Accelerator. I would like to congratulate the organizers of this meeting, Gavi, the World Vaccine Alliance, the African Union through the CDC African Vaccine Control Center, and our host France for their efforts in the service of public health. By my presence at this forum, I wanted to express my personal attachment to health and the place it occupies in the action of my government. The recent history of the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us how vulnerable we are, how unprepared we are in the face of the pandemic, and that consequently health must be a permanent priority. A little over 4 years ago, COVID-19 had severely disrupted our health system and endangered the vaccination programs that were then relegated to the background in the face of the urgency, of course, of fighting the pandemic. Thus, according to the UNICEF report for 2021, 23 million children had not received the basic vaccines necessary for their normal growth at the height of this health crisis. The pandemic had highlighted the structural disparities that already existed between developed countries and developing countries in terms of vaccination. Although Africa represents about 20% of the world's population, its vaccine industry provides barely 0.25% of the world's supply. The continent is still largely dependent on other regions of the world to meet these needs. It is to say the immensity of the task that remains to be accomplished for the vaccine sovereignty of Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, in commemoration of this meeting at the launch of the African Vaccine Production Accelerator, Gavi and all its partners are working together to correct the weak points of the continent in terms of responses to the pandemic, such as the lack of equipment and drugs, but above all, vaccines. We have experienced this during the COVID-19 pandemic with the late arrival and insufficient number of vaccines. One of the major challenges for Africa today is to produce vaccines, drugs, and diagnoses, but also to access the platforms of commercialization to fully participate in the fight against future health threats. It is a political will of Africa, and we invite all partners to support this agenda, which constitutes a priority as well as other priorities related in particular to the situation of war or climate change. Africa has the capacity to produce local vaccines. Pioneer countries are committed to this, including Senegal with the Institut Pasteur de Dakar. I remind you that this institute has existed in Senegal for a century and that it has almost a century of experience in the production of vaccines. The Institut Pasteur de Dakar produced its first vaccine against yellow fever in 1937. This same vaccine received the OMS pre-qualification in 1966, so for more than 50 years. In the perspective of consolidating its achievements and realizing the goal of the African Union to produce on the continent 60% of the vaccines used on site by 2040, the Institut Pasteur de Dakar initiated, with the support of the Senegalese government, an ambitious industrial development program estimated at $252 million. This program aims to master the entire value chain in pharmaceutical production, from the identification of needs to the use of products by beneficiaries. The implementation of these infrastructures and the acquisition of equipment are in the process of completion. The site of the Vaccinople of Diamniadio, which constitutes one of the entities of this program, will have an annual production capacity of 3 million doses of routine epidemic or pandemic vaccines and will use the 3 technological platforms, including the messenger RNA. To frame all these initiatives, Senegal has already set up the National Agency for Pharmaceutical Regulation, which has used a lot to reach the required maturation and homologation phases. All this would not have been possible without an extraordinary effort in the mobilization of resources for the financing of research, innovation, and health infrastructures. I thank the countries, institutions, and partner organizations, in the first row of which Gavi appears, for the support they provide to Senegal, in particular in the efforts to promote the vaccine and vaccination. Our partnership with Gavi, it should be noted, has yielded many positive results. Thank you, Mr. Barroso, for this constant support. It has greatly contributed to the efficiency of our national vaccination program and to the fight against early infant mortality. I know that Gavi does the same in other countries with such appreciated yields in terms of health prevention, adequate medical care in the fight against early mortality. As an essential pillar of solidarity and in recognition of the immense services it provides to the beneficiary countries, Gavi deserves the continued support of the international community. This is why, as President of the Republic of Senegal, I call on all countries and partner institutions to contribute generously to the reconstruction of Gavi's funds for the period from 2026 to 2030. Supporting Gavi's funding is also investing strategically and at a more sustained pace in the protection of our children, current and future generations. I will be engaged in this campaign